Abbott House has been changing lives for nearly 80 years. We serve approximately 130 South Dakota children each year through the residential treatment facility, the Bridges by Abbott House therapeutic foster homes in Mitchell and Rapid City, and the independent living program. During this time, we've learned a lot about how trauma affects our brains.
Researchers are calling it, they call it developmental trauma. And so that means that our kids have had multiple traumas from a very young age that has impacted the way that they view the world, the way that they view themselves. It impacts the way that they're able to even deal with simple transitions in life. It impacts the way that they see other people. And so developmentally, our kids are not the same as those that you maybe would encounter in your regular high school classroom or in the middle school.
An individual's ability to develop healthy, supportive relationships with their friends and significant others depends on our having first developed those kinds of relationships in our own families. Therefore, a child with a complex trauma history may have problems in romantic relationships, in their friendships, and with authority figures, such as their teachers, police officers, or even their foster home parents.
Part of what Abbott House is doing is really been able to change their focus from behavioral, but to really address the traumas. And trauma-informed really is looking at the kid and saying to them, what has happened to you? So it isn't that we are not addressing behaviors, but first of all, we're going to be looking at how do we heal these kids from what's happened to them. Abbott House has taken a huge step in moving forward in the last several years of really being trauma informed and looking at that.
Our daughter, she did a lot of sports. She was pretty active in school. She's a good student, and she did really well in school up until about maybe beginning high school. And we started seeing things kind of spiral. She started experiencing some depression, and then it continued to get worse. Even though we were seeing doctors and stuff, it just started spiraling. So she used a lot of different ways to help her with that, to avoid feeling the loneliness of depression. So she would self-destruct, and that would have been through drug use. Not a lot, but just enough. And then also just the promiscuity as a teenager, just out and about with, boys in her class, and it just led to a lot of destruction. And she did that, it would numb her, the feelings she felt with her depression. I think processing through that as a family was extremely helpful when we would come once a month for those trips. And it was, it was at least a 5-hour drive for us, but it was definitely worth it when we came and worked with her on that.
What's really nice about being able to individualize our work that we do with the girls is that you're able to really look at a girl's need and see what is it that they need. For instance, if we have a young lady who has a very difficult time with talking about the things that have happened to her, and so what we've been able to do is really focus on the connecting part, being able to provide opportunities for her just to be able to be a kid again, to be able to experience what it's like to be happy, to have joy.
was taken out of my household, and from age 12 to 17, I've always struggled whether I call him mom or dad, or do I call them by their first names. And for the longest time, I've called them by their first names. And every phone call, they end with "I love you." And most of the time, just kidding, all the time, I don't say "I love you," and I just say "okay, bye." But with the last few months, I have been able to say "I love you" to them and actually mean it, and I feel proud. Your actions don't define you, and you are not your actions. And I don't know, like, growing up, like, I always thought, like, oh, I'm gonna end up like my mom, and so why not just do whatever I can to end up like her. And so I learned that, like, it is possible for me to change my outcomes and not be like my mom and be something better. And another thing that actually is hard, or was hard for me to accept, was that my abuse wasn't my fault and it was my dad's decisions. And that was the hardest thing to accept while working in therapy, because I was always told, like, you weren't good enough. But now that I am, and I feel that I'm good enough, so I am glad that I know that my dad isn't, like, my dad's abuse wasn't my fault. Well, I found out that my mother is going back to prison, and my sister had ran away when she was younger, and she doesn't really know her place in the world, and I don't want to end up in prison or don't know where my place is in the world. So I want to be better than my mom and my sister, and like the mindset of, like, I can change and I will change.